Okay, my name is Nancy Barron, and I am the director of the Psychosocial Services and Training Institute in Cairo, Egypt. I came to international work 25 years ago. It's a long time ago. I was a family therapist in America. And after I finished my doctorate, I needed a break. I went to Japan and I taught English for a while. I was a lousy English teacher. I always wanted to do international work, and I just decided I would try. So I moved to Sri Lanka. There was a war. There was all sorts of trouble, and there wasn't any psychosocial or mental health care. And I kind of began from there. I was paid, I think I was paid $5 a month as a volunteer, and I started from that point. Well, I heard that there was this conference specifically where they were talking about children and adolescents. I'm a firm believer in family work, not just in children and adolescent work. So I came here to speak my mind, to make sure that UNICEF, UNHCR was truly speaking about family work. Oftentimes they do speak about children and women, and I feel sometimes that we spend too much energy talking about that and in some ways devaluing the family. And I think that it's really important that we talk about family work and children as part of families. So I came here to make sure that that's what we're talking about. If I think back to my early years of work, in 1994, I wrote a children's book. And a children's book when I was in Sri Lanka called A Little Elephant Finds His Courage. And at that time, I was working with women whose husbands were missing, and they had never told their children that their dads were gone or that the dads were dead. It was an incredible experience to try to see where my ideas about open communication fit with a Sri Lankan culture. I mean, should these mothers be telling their kids, or should the mothers keep the secret that they've held this long? So I wrote this kids' book, which was the story of a dad dying, and we developed all these family and community empowerment projects. In those days, we worked with about 30,000 families, sharing the idea of the book and opening communication around difficult issues. It was an eye-opener. I can't say at the beginning I was sure it was a good idea. Over time, it became clear that it was a good idea, and it is a good idea, and that communicating is one of those universal ideas and universal beliefs or important skills that helps people in times of adversity. So that open communication is important, and I learned that way back then. I moved to Egypt now 7 years ago or so. When I moved to Egypt, it was clear to me that something dramatic was missing, and that's that people were not able to help themselves as much as they could because community workers, refugee community workers, and I work with refugees, were a real important missing point that people talked about community work. Community work was all about taking an Egyptian person and moving them into the community to talk to people. It wasn't about talking or training, refugees themselves to be able to help themselves. That's what we had always done in Africa when I worked in Africa. It's what I always did in Asia when I worked in Asia, and somehow it wasn't there in the urban context. So I went there with the idea that I was going to help to build a model for the urban context and try to see how we could activate refugees to help themselves. And so I think the intervention that I have learned really is effective, is training people, building their capacities, facilitating them to be able to help their own people. They do it far better than I would ever do it. A few things. One is that you have to learn to accept what you can do. If you spend all your energy worrying about what you can't do, which is a lot, then you'll just burn yourself right out and have lots of anxiety problems. That if you concentrate on what you can do and wake up in the morning and think about what can I do today and have some satisfaction in that, that's incredibly important. The other thing is that recognizing that as a foreigner, where you belong. I love to work directly with people, but I don't do that anymore. Because where I belong in the kind of work I'm doing is empowering people to help themselves. So I need to be a trainer, I need to be a facilitator, I need to be an advocate, a manager, a money raiser, to facilitate the people who should do the work directly with the people who have problems. That's hard because I like to work with people. And it's very difficult to take that one remove role. But I think that is part of the role of an expatriate. We're building sustainable structures. We're not building jobs where we feel that we are the person who is saving people. We're trying to build structures that are going to help people over time. I think policy makers, well, two different things. One is donors, people who give money to people like me. Come and look at what we do. That you need to monitor what we do. You need to watch what we do. You need to see what we do. I think that when you do that, it makes our work better in some ways, but it also means that you then can grow to appreciate what we do. Too often people don't do that. That they don't come to see us, and again, seeing us helps them to have confidence that what we do is worthwhile. With policymakers, I think that policymakers need to recognize that mental health and psychosocial support is just a part of development. It's a part of people, and they just have to constantly be badgered to make sure that it's inclusive. That mental health and psychosocial support is a part of everything. It's a part of how you give relief. It's a part of education. It's a part of healthcare. I think policymakers need to know that it's part of an integrated whole, and not to forget us, but to add us to everything they do.